Hi everyone, in this last video of our Arnold crash course, we are going to go over the Hypershade. Alright, I'm going to continue with the geometry and lighting setup that I used in the last video. You can go back and review that. I did make one change, which is I'm using an HDRI image here. That's the same, but what I have done is I've turned off the background, or the backdrop rather. So I had a little backdrop here. I can toggle that on here. I've turned that off. And then, so I don't see the HDRI image in the background, I've just made my background a solid color. And I did that in the node editor. So if you go to the node editor, you can kind of set that up. And I have a video on that, so you should check that out if you're not sure how to do it. But basically, you link this up in the node editor, and then in the Skydome light itself, in the attribute editor, you have to make sure that the Skydome light is not visible in the camera. So if we go to the Skydome light shape node, if we have the camera visibility on, we're still going to see some of this in the background, but if we turn this off, then we're just going to see the color that we select in the node editor. So watch the previous video if you want to know how to do that. What I did notice is that by turning off the node editor, by turning off the backdrop, that I get much more interesting reflections, because my reflective material here can now access all of the colors coming from the HDRI, so that's nice. Okay, but let's show how we can do some even more advanced materials. Beyond just assigning them here in the viewport, because we'll in future tutorials go even through some even more advanced things you can do. But in order to be able to do those advanced things, you have to understand the Hypershade, and so I'm going to click here, display the Hypershade window. That's going to pop up, and here we're going to be able to see all of the materials that we have so far in our scene. The Lamberts, the Blinns, and if I click here, it's going to give us a little representation of that. And sometimes if you're doing an interactive rendering in Arnold, and Arnold is interactively rendering here, because I can kind of spin around and look around in this view as well. To have multiple renderings going can be kind of a pain sometimes on your computer, for your computer, so we can pause this if we don't want to see the updates. But this should be fine for now, and so I'm going to keep that going. So here's our Blinn, here's our Lambert, so you can see all of the shaders that we have going here. I'm just going to go ahead and maximize that. So mostly when you're working in the Hypershade, you're going to either be sort of tweaking materials or making your new materials here in this workspace. And you can have multiple workspaces here just by making tabs, and this becomes a good place to store materials that you're working on. Let's make our first default or our custom material, and most of the time when rendering with Arnold, you're going to use their universal shader. And when I say shader, that's just a synonym for material, and that shader is the AI Standard Surface. So like it says here, if you want to start creating nodes, hit tab, and then you can search, and we want AI Standard Surface, and we can grab that, and then this is the default shader. And once we click it, we can begin looking at all of its attributes in here. And we're also going to see a representation of it up here in the Hypershade. What's really nice about the standard surface shader is that there are some great presets to start with, so you don't have to build materials from scratch. So what I'm going to start with is the, let's replace our Blinn with another kind of metal. So let's try brushed metal. And if we hit replaced here, then you can see we get a different kind of metal color. Let's break this down a little bit, and then we can come over and grab our shading group here. So our standard surface, I'm not going to change the name here yet, because we can try different materials, but I can grab that middle mouse button, drag it, and drop it onto an object. You'll see that it goes black in the Maya viewport, and that's because the viewport 2.0 can't display all of our Arnold materials here. Okay, so this is looking pretty similar to our blend, so let's try, but we do now have that material assigned. Let's look and see what happens if we just go ahead and use another preset. So preset, and let's choose, I don't know, what would be really different or obvious, copper. So let's replace that. And now let's minimize that. Okay, and now we see that we have this nice copper color here. So this is starting to look pretty different now. Let's also go ahead and let's see, what do we want to do? We're going to assign another material to this. I want to talk about the render settings just for a moment though, because you can see here that I'm doing a GPU rendering, and there are two ways that Arnold can calculate your rendering. And one is using the CPU, which is the central processing unit of your computer, or if you have a good graphics card with really fast memory, and you can use that like an NVIDIA card, or like a AMD card. You can actually tell Arnold to crunch the rendering with the GPU. And the way that you set that up here, and it's typically faster if you're using the GPU. And the way that you assign or tell Arnold what to use is up here in the settings. If you go to Arnold Renderer, System, GPU, is what I have set now. But what I've discovered is that there's some rendering engines like Redshift, which are GPU native, but Arnold really does favor CPU because it will break if you, CPU renderings, it will break if you assign certain materials. And what I've noticed is that materials that use something called subsurface scattering will not work with the GPU, at least the one that I have. And so I'm going to switch this back to CPU because I'm going to use a material. So my rendering, what you'll notice is my rendering is quite a bit slower because the GPU memory is really fast, but the CPU rendering is more stable. All right, so now let's go to the Hypershade again. And I'm going to, let's save this material. So it's going to be saved, and I could clear it out of this tab and it would still be saved, but I'm going to just call this metal 1, and we could call this metal 1 shading group. And so that's going to be here, and then we could clear it out, but if we wanted to easily come back and tweak it, so let me just show you what happens if I clear it out. I can clear it out here, and then metal 1, I can middle mouse button drag it back. I don't see the shading group node by default, so if I hit this double input and output connection here, now the shading group comes back. If I go to the shading groups, I have my metal 1 shading group, I could also bring that one in. I could the shading group, hit this inputs, outputs, and now it shows everything again. So I'm just going to, multiple ways to do it. I'm going to go and call this metal 1. That's my tab. Now I'm going to make a new one, and this will be my new material. And let's just call this one, no, I don't know what it's going to be called yet. So let's tab, make our new AI standard surface material here. And now we are going to use a preset, and the preset that I want to use is plastic. Replace. And so now we start with this nice blue color, and I'm going to come over to I'm going to pause this for a moment. Come over here, grab my standard surface, and I just want to make sure that I can see my objects. So this is where having a smaller screen is not helpful here, but I want to drag it onto that one. So middle mouse button click, or middle mouse button drag and drop that material onto the mass of my rendering here. And let's see here. Now I have this nice blue color, which is cool. Okay, this is also nice. When I select this object, so I can jump into the Hypershade, but you'll also see that if I select it in the modeling viewport, or the modeling window here, I can also, what did I do? Do something? No. I was trying to, no, I was switching here. So, okay, great. So I'm selecting my mass here, and I can go to the AI Standard Surface. And this also, so I can either look at the attributes of the material here in Hypershade by selecting it in this workspace or up here, or I can select the object in the modeling viewport, and I can find the tab in the attribute editor for this shader. And if I bring this over, then I could start, changing things here. I don't have to go back into the Hypershade. So I could give this a different color, just kind of play with all of those things here and see how they get updated in the viewport. The cool thing about the plastic material is that it uses something called subsurface, the thing that would have broken my GPU rendering. But let's increase the weight of the subsurface scattering, and you can see that this starts to show, it becomes more of like a translucent material. And depending on the weight, if you have, let's say, a low weight of say 0.2, you're going to very subtly see some of whatever this second color is. And you can make this color the same. It will still give some depth to your object. But we could also make this a different color, which is what we have now. And then as we increase the weight of this, we can get this really interesting effect. So materials that have this might be like a wax or even a plastic, where there's a little bit of translucency, and this gives a lot of depth by playing with the subsurface. And then we can experiment with different colors, and that's going to, you can see that it's pink but a little more green here, and then maybe we want to dial the weight down. But this can really kind of change your rendering in a nice way. So what's cool here is that we get the pink in some parts, and then we get this, like in the shadows, we get this green color. So the standard surface shader is really, really a great shader, and there's quite a lot of power. So what I encourage you to do is to, in the Hypershade, experiment with making different materials, and use the presets of the standard surface shader as a spot to, as a jumping off point for making different materials. And I think, closing Hypershade, I think we're done, and this is looking pretty good. And in future videos, we'll be digging into some of the more interesting things you can do with the Hypershade. On the one hand, we'll look at how you can bring in substance materials and Substance Painter, applications of materials in Substance Painter, and we'll also look at how you can make custom materials from scratch and get displacement on objects directly in Maya. So thanks for watching.